This is for activists and other critics of the West. What case would you make to an Afghani trying to flee Afghanistan right now to get to the West? What would you say to make them understand how oppressive and anti-them that you think the West is? How would you convince them that it's better to not move to the West and become a minority, but instead stay in their homeland within their culture? Regardless of how the unfolding situation in Afghanistan resolves itself, and this situation is due to and not limited to what the United States of America and others have been doing there for the last 20 years, this situation can provide us with many examples of how the actions people take are a lot more telling than the words that they say. Here are 4 out of the many examples one can find. What actions were actually being taken in supposedly training the Afghan military and civil service? Compare the words that were said to the actual capitulation that we all just witnessed. Now with this, there are actual figures and records somewhere about the funds and actions that were supposedly the basis for the people who were making these claims to have so much confidence in making those claims. Next, what did the media and those who claim to be the sole sources of real factual news know? Think about it this way. When you watch an interview of a state official and the interviewer asks, "What do we know about X?" Do you ever ask yourself who is the we that they're speaking of there? Now understand, a state official, as a member of the state, which is defined by an organization that has a monopoly of coercion over a given area, they would have vested interests in having some influence over the information that's shared. They don't really have their positions of power due to the truth content of facts, but instead the control of facts. That I understand. But some countries, in some places, some locations, just have relatively freer sharing of information. At least we're told this. So in those situations, what were the actual reporters of these organizations doing besides relaying state-approved propaganda? But that could simply be their job. That could be what they do, and they just tell us something else. But we are part of this as a communication. We're part of the people who are hearing these things. So next example, why did we believe what we were told? Which actions could we have taken to better ascertain the truth value of what was being claimed? Because the floor remains a floor. The actual cost and actions it took us to believe falsehoods once may have seemed low, but as the quality of life increases, you stand to lose more than ever. And that's why you see certain people participate in this sort of lip service activism, because they've just made the calculation that there's not much to lose by sending out a tweet, sending out some words, saying some press release, versus the things they could stand to lose if they're perceived to not be in support of certain things due to the actions that the people who say they support those things have done in the past. Now, the last example is what words will people claim matter and determine actions? Because I already see blame shifting, saying X person said Y, so Z had to happen. What other Z does a person saying this support because X said Y? And how about things said tens or hundreds or thousands of years ago about A, B, C, LGBTQ, and etc.? So far, the Taliban is saying certain things. Acts such as the jailbreaks are subjective, even if it's from the simple basis of saying, was there ever a just authority to imprison those people to begin with? So time will tell on their actual actions, and more of those will be felt first by those within Afghanistan, and then later those without. But I saw someone say, "I imagine you're pretty safe in Afghanistan as long as you do whatever the Taliban tells you to do so. Thus, there was no support for democracy." Now, I'm rather confident that I would disagree with the nature and valuation of democracy of this individual, but check this out. "I imagine you're pretty safe in Afghanistan, as long as you do whatever the government established under the American presence or occupation tell you to do so. Thus, there was and should have been a support for democracy." See how that works? You'd probably rightfully disagree with that statement. Because what X tells you to do is not a good basis for action for anyone interested in the increase and continuation of human flourishing. This rule by force is something that most animals, including the human animals that we are, have managed to live through, but it is definitely not what the places that people in Afghanistan are trying to flee to were built on. It's not the things that made those places that much more desirable to live in. It is still in the nature of human animals to use our ability to say one thing and do the other. However, the safety that we all crave, and most of you hearing this benefit from, is directly correlated to how the rules, which are just words that people discuss and agreed on, don't simply depend on being able to utilize force to compel or prevent each other from acting in whichever way we believe we should.